from the chair, along with my council colleague, Nuri Martinez from the 6th District. Mr. Koretz will not be with us today. So we are going to begin this meeting. I will begin with public comment. We have only one public comment card, so I'll take that card on item number 1, and that's Jed. Why don't you come on up?
Mr. Chair, would you like that item read into the record?
Oh, yes, please.
Item number 1 is a Rodriguez bond in motion relative to prohibiting the parking of vehicles that are in excess of 22 feet in length and over 4 feet in height during the hours of 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. along certain blocks on Gladstone Avenue.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Jed Perry. I'm the co-chair of the Housing and Homelessness Committee with the Democratic Socialists of America, Los Angeles. And I just want to let you all know that, and let anybody in this room know that any vehicle bans are clearly targeted at our growing unhoused population. It is once again a tool of banishment, just as 8502, 5611, 4118D, all these ordinances that clearly are targeted at clearing out the homeless and not helping them. And so I think we all have to understand that this is what it's about. I would hope that all the council members will reach out to their constituents, because all too often I really feel like they're a little too sensitive to their quality of life. They don't like seeing the homeless right now. I paid for my home. I shouldn't have to look at someone sleeping in their car. I'm sorry, we're in a crisis, and you know what? We have to accommodate people because there's not enough shelters or permanent housing. There won't be for a long time. We're going to have to start accommodating folks, and people are going to have to start getting used to encampments and people sleeping in their vehicles in their neighborhoods and treat them as neighbors.
Thanks, Jed. All right, that concludes public comment. We have no other public comment cards. Unless Ms. Martinez objects, I'm going to recommend items 1 through 7 for consent.
Let me think about it.
Okay, so I think I need you to say that a little louder.
Pardon me,
I'm
Mr.
by
Chair.
Mr. Bonin.
I'm sorry.
Okay, yes.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair. Richard Williams, City Clerk's Office. On item number 1, the Department of Transportation has submitted a revised attachment to their report.
Okay, so we will approve items 1 through 7 with that adjustment to item number 1.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us, I will take item 9 out of order because we have a special guest here. Could you read item 9 into the record?
Item 9 is a Buscaino-Rodriguez motion instructing DOT with the assistance of the CLA, the Bureaus of Engineering and Street Services, and other departments as needed to report with recommendations for potential locations for a cycle track loop that optimizes connectivity, ridership, safety, and economic vitality in CD15.
And we are blessed today to have the representative of CD15, Mr. Joe Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Martinez. Mr. Bonin, thank you so much for taking this item so swiftly and quickly into your committee. This is, in CD15, we try to think of innovative ways to look at our multimodal transportation options. And in Wilmington, for one of the first neighborhoods in the city that welcomed both a docked bike share program with Metro, and also we are in the middle of a pilot program with the dockless bike share program through Line Bike. And this is a community, as we all know, colleagues, the impacted, disadvantaged community surrounded by heavy industrial refineries to the north, Port of Los Angeles to the south. And it's a community that has demanded additional amenities. We're really proud of the fact that we're leading an effort with the Wilmington Arts Alliance on really promoting economic development on Avalon. And we feel that this item before you, which will call for a cycle track loop, is a way to boost some economic development opportunities, help support the existing businesses, and also encourage other businesses to come to the Wilmington community. And we have seen in other parts of the country, in Washington, D.C., and also in Salt Lake City, how a cycle track loop has been a economic boost to those respective cities. But I feel that this item before you is more of a cycle track loop, and calling for the feasibility of a cycle track loop. I believe it really is going to help promote health, safety, economic development, in a time where we've seen 3 $100 million parks get built. The Wilmington Buffer Park built by the Port of Los Angeles, the adjacent Harbor Ken Malloy Park that was recently built, and more importantly, recently the addition, the announcement of the investment being made at the Wilmington Waterfront Park. And while Wilmington has the highest concentration of bike lanes in California, bike ridership is diminishing, mostly because, quite frankly, people are afraid and scared to death of jumping on a bike in the middle of horrendous traffic in our city. And I, for one, can testify to that. Every May, we have our Bike to Work a day in the city of Los Angeles. So I take the leap of faith to leave my downtown San Pedro City Hall and make my way up 24 miles north to City Hall here in Los Angeles. And I've had numerous close calls. I almost got killed a few times. But the fact that I took one for the team, Mr. Bonin, we have to do everything we can to promote ride your bike to work. And
do you wear a helmet?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Many of us follow very closely the live coverage, wall to wall on Facebook.
Right.
Beginning to end.
In fact, our communication director almost killed himself going through a couple rail lines, but nonetheless,
I remember that.
He took a spill. But this is why it's important to look at really forward thinking of looking at ways to promote and bring forth a cycle track loop. Now, this is just in concept, so I do want to encourage the community of Wilmington, who's been demanding these types of amenities, and it's the question of why not us. And if you look at the Strand and the beach cities, which I feel is their most valuable asset, is their cycle track loop. And we feel that we can bring this asset to Wilmington. So this is in concept, asking for the departments to come forward with the feasibility, but most importantly, we want this to be a community-driven process. There's some excitement, and I believe there's a lot of interest, but I'll end with this, Mr. Bonin, if I can. We feel that this motion before you, the driving force behind this motion was Ciclavia, when Wilmington hosted Ciclavia a year and a half ago, and all folks from all parts of the county came to Wilmington. Businesses were excited, and at the conclusion of Ciclavia, residents and businesses said, when's the next Ciclavia? So we shouldn't have to wait for Ciclavia to promote a healthier and safer community by bringing this cycle track loop. Well, we feel we're going to have safe biking in Wilmington, which is the largest network of bikes in the city of bike lanes rather in the city of Los Angeles. So we ask for your support moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Buscaino, for coming to testify. I think this is phenomenal. I want to applaud your initiative and your leadership on this. This is great because it does two things. I mean, cycle tracks are the gold standard of bicycling infrastructure, and it'll make it safe for everybody of all ages and abilities. And we need to be more about intersections and segments and a holistic network. So I love this. I was unaware that the greatest concentration was in Wilmington. That's great, and so this is a perfect place to do it. So I would just say, ride up, Wilmington.
Thank you.
And please join us at Ciclavia in the Valley.
Coming up.
In June.
Thank you.
23rd? Ciclavia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So without objection, that is approved. All right, and that brings us to item number 8.
Item number 8 is the DOT report relative to the status of Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority and the city's bike share pilot program and expanding existing downtown and west side LA pilot areas.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Marcel Porras, Chief Sustainability Officer, LA DOT. I'm before the committee today to provide an update on the status of the existing Metro bike share partnership that the city of LA is involved in, and specifically around the downtown LA, Venice existing and Wilmington existing program, and then also to request authority to expand both the downtown and West LA systems. And so with that, I wanted to just start by providing some facts and figures that are high level in terms of the current program. To date, we have approximately 400,000 trips that have been taken since the inception of bike share. We've sold just under 13,000 passes. We've traveled over 1 million miles and reduced over 1 million pounds of CO2 emissions. We have a ridership that varies between the downtown LA and Venice in terms of rides per bike per day. On average, it's a little bit over 1 for the system, with the Venice system having higher ridership and the downtown LA having slightly lower ridership. I think in terms of mobility comparisons, the fare box recovery for the investment for Metro Bike Share System is hovering around 15-16%, which is on par with the fare box recovery for the Dash system, and slightly less than the 20% fare box recovery for bus and rail that Metro reported in this last fiscal year. We've learned a lot in the 20 months that we've been operating Metro Bike Share. I think it's definitely been a strong partnership with Metro. And we continue to strive forward with the ultimate goal of increasing more mobility options for Angelino, and at the end of the day, seeing how we can get more butts and bikes, increase ridership and trips in the city. To that extent, we've done some piloting of different fare initiatives. We've done $2 Tuesday rides. We've introduced a $7 day pass, and we've most recently developed a partnership with the business sector as well, a business program that allows employers to provide a subsidy at a reduced rate for passes. To date, we have 400 employees participating in that program, and the companies there range from large companies such as Google and AEG to also including mom and pop stores, shops, and I think most notably, Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority is also partnering in that to provide bike passes for their employees. But I think we continue to gain feedback from our riders. Our operations partner, Bicycle Transit Systems, together with Metro, conduct an annual survey. And from those survey results, we hear that there are still barriers to people accessing the system and using it. I think most notably, the biggest one has to do around fares and I think also in terms of adding more destinations for people to go to. Right now, as I mentioned, we have approximately 60 stations downtown. We have 12 stations on the west side, and we have 1 station in Wilmington that augments the Port of LA investment for stations. But I think that hearing what some of the constraints are from our users, we're working with Metro to actually go back and look at fare restructuring, which they'll be presenting to their Metro board next month, as well as, and I think most exciting, looking at the technological advances to doing tap integration for Metro Bike Share. So right now, you currently can register your tap card, but there's no way for it to recognize what status you have at Metro, whether you're a senior, whether you're a student, or whether you're low income. And so with this full integration of the TAP program that Metro has invested, we will finally be able to acknowledge and recognize who our user is on the bike share side as well, which would allow us to do a number of things. That could be senior reduced passes, students, and then also for low income, I think most importantly. It also, I think, adds a really compelling opportunity for increasing first mile, last mile connections and providing free transfers for riders, because as we continue to build out our system, I think the challenge that we continue to see is how are people getting to that first mile, last mile connection to existing transit infrastructure. So before you today, as I mentioned, is a recommendation to authorize us to expand our existing system. Consistent with the Los Angeles County Bike Share Implementation Plan that was developed in conjunction with Metro, other partner cities, and consultants, we are recommending an expansion for the west side of a total of 700 bicycles, and for the downtown LA section, it would be a total of 1,000 bicycles that we would be recommending. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just a couple. One, you hit the nail on the head about one of the problems with the Metro bike share system is the cost. When we launched it at Metro, I think Director Solis was with me on this and saying it was twice as high as it should be. I still think it's twice as high as it should be, and I'm hoping that when this comes back to Metro, we're cutting the cost dramatically by like 50% because the price point just doesn't work. I think people like the system when they use it, but it's just not affordable the way it is. So if we're going to be expanding this, I'm hoping that Metro takes the parallel step of cutting the cost, and I think we'll see significantly greater use. Let me ask you a couple questions. One of the criticisms that I hear, and I've heard it, at Metro recently, is that we're spending too much money on bike share at a time when you've got companies like Lime Bike and the dockless bikes coming in that are dirt cheap. So what's the value for us in making a public investment in using a system like this?
No, I think it's a great question. I think there are several factors that we consider. I think first and foremost, the city and Metro are active partners in controlling the system and looking at the deployment. As you mentioned, in terms of the fare structure, I think we are the first transit agency and the first program in the country that will have integrated bike share and transit, which is going to be a huge advantage. I think to get dockless companies there, which I think is something we should be doing because, again, we should be expanding just mobility options in general. Really doing that integration with Metro, bus, rail, and with other services, I think is going to be key. I think there's still a lot of questions out there about the dockless companies, and I think we're cautiously optimistic. But I think in terms of we know what we have with Metro Bike Share, right? And with our partner, we have a woman-owned business that provides 24/7 operations and maintenance support. I think the uptime statistics on our existing system is like 99.65%. I think there's a lot of information that we can glean from the data, and I think in this new and also in this new batch of bikes that we're going to be getting, every single bike will be GPSed, which is going to provide the city and Metro with an incredible data resource so that when we're looking at doing programs such as building new bicycle infrastructure, we can leverage that data to understand what are the routes people are taking. We can engage a customer base of cyclists in terms of what are their impressions of our infrastructure, where should we be going, et cetera. And I think lastly, the sustainability, one of the things is the sustainability question. I think one of the things that frightens me a little bit about the dockless model, and again, I think it's up to the city to regulate, but the life cycle of our bikes are a minimum of 10 years. Denver has the same equipment manufacturer, and they're on approximately year 10 of those bikes. Yeah. And so when I see pictures of bikes that almost seem disposable in a way, it calls to question the life cycle and the city's responsibility about equipment and manufacturing standards. And ideally, those are all things that we address. But I think for now, being an active supporter and investor in public bike share gives us a great place to negotiate new mobility solutions in the future and the data integration as well.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. The bikes are definitely more durable, and the integration is really pretty key. I think the other thing that we can do, and hopefully we can address some of this with the dockless when we take up the regulations for dockless bikes and scooters next month, is make sure that the resources are available in a more equitable way across the city. I mean, here we're expanding on CD11 and CD9, which are two very different districts. And my understanding is we're going to go from the USC Figueroa corridor this summer and then go deeper into central LA beginning of next year. Yes.
Correct.
So, I mean, we're then going to want to be able to provide this resource out into other parts of the city, whether it's the Valley or CD8 or any other part that's interested. And since it's a public resource, we have the ability to dictate that a little bit more. So, if we do approve this, though, we do need to condition this upon funding availability We haven't deliberated on the budget yet, and I understand there still might be a bit of a hole that we'll need to fill through grant funds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Ms. Martinez?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so usually when we have discussions about sustainable transportation options, such as your car share or your EV car share or your bike programs, Council District 6 is never part of that discussion. Since I've been here, that's been the case. So what considerations have you given to deciding which communities get to expand?
So, as I mentioned earlier, in 2015, when Metro and the City of Los Angeles started thinking about expansion of launching a bike share program, they put together an index, a bike share like suitability and readiness analysis. Those included factors such as bicycle infrastructure, density of population, I think also community support, readiness. And so as part of that exercise, they did phase recommendations for implementation. I think that continues to be, there's opportunities to continue to review that in partnership with Metro as an investment. And so I know that as we've started talking about the dockless discussion, I've made it a point to sit down, particularly with all of the council districts in the valley, to look at what opportunities could.
So is what part of the consideration also, say, mass transit connections? Is that one of the considerations?
Definitely.
Yeah, if I can just jump in. And
And I don't mean, I certainly don't mean any disrespect to Mr. O'Farrell, but then why is Silver Lake or Echo Park, why are they included? When you have rail stops along, they don't have any Metro rail stops in those communities, but I have the Orange Line on mine.
Sure, I can answer that question. No, definitely. And I think the Orange Line is a huge asset, and I think would be a jumping off point for any bike share infrastructure.
Phase, you don't get to the valley until phase 5, and that's only in North Hollywood.
Correct. So in regards, one of the lessons learned, and so in the Wilmington area, Wilmington, San Pedro, that was an area that was not, that ranked high in terms of the expansion of bike share. There was an opportunity because of an investment from the Port of Los Angeles to invest and subsidize the city's portion of bike share. That happened. LADOT thought it was an opportune time to test that market, and working with Council District 15, we put a station in Wilmington. I think what we've seen is that there are a couple of things that impact ridership, and I think that's one of the things that we're always going to be judged by, and why it's so important for us to take these lessons learned. Our system in CD15 is among the lowest in terms of ridership. Now, the metrics that we've been looking in terms of ridership have been around rides per day, fare box recovery, and so where we've seen, and when we talk about Echo Park and Silver Lake and MacArthur Park and Pico Union and Koreatown, one of the things that we see as attributing is really making sure that the system works, and doing that, doing a contiguous expansion. As when you go to a different service area and start one, you need several years to get it to take. There are additional cost centers that create in San Pedro. There was a whole new warehouse facilities and operation staff that's dedicated to that. And so for us right now, as we're continuing to look at the new mobility market and how it's integrating, one of the things is acting very conservatively with how we expand so that it's contiguous. And both Echo Park and the neighborhoods around that are contiguous. The other thing that I would add as a resident of CD13 is that the bus lines, as I'm sure in the valley, are high ridership bus lines. The 2 and the 4 in that district are high propensity, and they're high density as well. And so those are just some considerations, and I think, but I do think that the point's well taken in terms of what are we doing and how can we do better to look at opportunities to provide biking options.
I appreciate you taking my point, but it doesn't seem to ever turn into much. which means you don't come to my district. The other thing I wanted to ask you, what's going on with the program in Pasadena? Because it's my understanding that Metro's closing the Pasadena bike share program. Is that true?
I can't comment on that. I mean, I can ask. We have some folks from Metro.
Do you know?
I have friends who live in Pasadena,
Yep.
It hasn't been decided yet.
but that's the rumor, right?
It's under consideration.
It's under consideration,
yeah,
so I'm not making something up.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Thank you. So that's that's what I thought. Okay, well, I'm happy to support this, but again, I don't see any real, besides you talking about it being more feasible in these other communities, I just don't feel that the 2 million people that make up the San Fernando Valley are necessarily being taken into consideration.
In addition to the two items on here, I'm going to ask that we, assuming Ms. Martinez consents, add a third item. In addition to authorizing DOT in the two ways here, with the amendment that, subject to funding availability, is we also add a third one, which is to direct LADOT to work with the San Fernando Valley Council offices and the San Fernando Valley COG and LA Metro to come up with a proposal for a priority pilot project for bike share in the San Fernando Valley.
Good. Got it.
I think Ms. Martinez's point is well taken, and we need to leapfrog the valley a little bit higher in our priorities. Is that amendment okay?
Sure.
Okay. So with those amendments, the item is approved. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Richard Williams, City Clerk. I may have misstated the technical correction. I'd like to clarify it's for item number 7. There is a revised attachment 1 to the LADOT report.
Okay. So ordered. Okay. There's nothing else left? Okay. That concludes the balance of the agenda. I see some folks have filled out speaker cards. They arrived late. We'd already taken those items up before they arrived. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.